Today's replay is a short and somewhat unique little skirmish. Total War Warhammer II, High Elves vs Vampire Coast. The Dread Fleet has attacked the Shrine of Loec with a small but extremely dangerous force. So, what exactly makes this battle unique? Well, first of all, I'm not actually playing as either side here. This footage comes from a co-op campaign me and my girlfriend are currently playing, where she's Tyrion and I'm Silostra, so this is actually her army. If you're not familiar with co-op campaigns, if you decide to manually fight a battle, the player who isn't involved becomes a spectator, and can draw on the map to give tactical advice and take command of any individual units that the active player chooses to give to them. In this case, my girlfriend is commanding the main force of spears and archers, and I'm in command of just the Illyrian Reaver archers. The second thing that makes this unique is that I have both the recording of us playing the battle and the save battle replay file, and they don't match. This was played on an earlier version of the game, and that has bugged the replay out slightly, causing a few key moments in the battle to go very differently and straight up change in the end result, albeit in a kinda cursed and weird way, as I'll explain later. It's not a perfect representation of another reality, but it does give us an idea of how the battle could have gone very differently. Finally, this matchup is interesting, in that we're fighting a real glass cannon of an enemy army. The bats and zombies are trash and we can easily kill them, the gunners are moderately dangerous but our archers can beat them in a shootout, and the Lord is likewise dangerous but easily filled with arrows. The biggest threat here are these two bloated corpses, which, if you haven't played the game, are essentially suicide units that violently explode when they make contact with an enemy. Each one of these can easily wipe out at least one unit of spearmen, and this is where the problems begin. The bats and zombies are only not a threat so long as we have spearmen to keep our archers safe. If they go, these units become a lot deadlier, and if they catch our archers in melee, then our archers can't return fire on any of those ranged threats, and any remaining spearmen we have get shredded by gunfire. If we focus our fire, we can probably kill at least one of these corpses before they can close with us, but all it takes is the enemy rushing their bats forward to lock up our archers and stop us from doing that. So, here we have an enemy that is mostly awful units that are only dangerous because of how well they synergize together. And that sounds somewhat exploitable if you ask me. Being the much more experienced player between us, I usually give my girlfriend advice on different strategies we could take, but since it's her army, it's her call on what risks are worth it and what plan we're going with. She decides to deploy in a standard defensive position on top of a hill, with the spearmen in close proximity to the archers so they can respond quicker when the bats swoop in. For the Reavers, I pitched 3 different plans of what I could do with them, and ask her to choose which one she thinks is best. Option 1 is the safe option, holding the Reavers in reserve near the rest of the army until the enemy bats are dealt with. Once the bats are gone, there won't be anything left on the field that can catch me, and I can engage in a hit-and-run campaign against the enemy. This keeps the Reavers pretty safe, but it doesn't do much to help the army as a whole in the critical opening part of the battle. Option 2 recognizes that the bloated corpses are the biggest threats, and has me aggressively skirmish with them as they close to cause as much damage as possible. The downside is that this puts me in easy reach of their bats and gunners, so it's likely the Reavers will take heavy damage, and there's no guarantee that I can put enough damage on either of those corpses to take them down. Still, by putting the Reavers in harm's way, it gives the rest of the army more of a fighting chance. Option 3 is the wildcard option. By using Vanguard deployment to start right in front of the enemy, we can attempt to bait one of their corpses into detonating within their own formation, annihilating our Reavers, but also possibly taking a solid chunk of the enemy force with it. This kills our cavalry reserve within the first few seconds of the battle, which will limit our tactical options later, but it's guaranteed to take one of the corpses down and has a chance of causing a lot of damage to the enemy. My girlfriend weighs up the options, and decides on option 3.
Quickly now!
The Reavers move in, steering towards the corpse to aggro it, before charging the enemy gunners, who are probably the most valuable unit I could annihilate. A unit of bats close in, the corpse takes the bait, and the way I've positioned myself makes the clearest path to me right through the middle of their formation, and... Zombies completely destroyed, gunners and bats both seriously wounded, and the Reavers somehow still largely intact. Let's play that back at normal speed. I initially moved to retreat, then I decide the bats have me pinned anyway, so I may as well double down on the gunners. Shortly afterwards, my Reavers terror rout, and it seems for a second like the other corpse might take the bait, but the Reavers run away too quickly for it to happen. The Reavers recover, but the bats are closing in, so I retreat to our archers' field of fire as quickly as possible. The second corpse is still a big threat, and while it would be nice to try and tempt some bats into the blast radius, our Reavers are almost routed, and we both decide it's better to just get rid of that corpse. The Reavers have had enough at that point and break completely, which was pretty understandable to be honest. The bats descend on the rest of the army, but their ranged firepower is too far away to take advantage of the opportunity. They take heavy losses and start to crumble immediately. Shortly afterwards, the bats are all gone, and now the battle is a shootout that heavily biases the elven archers. The kill counts are relatively unimpressive because the game doesn't track friendly fire numbers, but the Reavers survive and not a single unit is lost. But what could have been? In the world of the replay, the battle starts largely the same. The same explosion happens, the Reavers terror route and recover, but when I move to intercept the second bloated corpse, it's further away this time, and the bats are able to overwhelm and rout me first. It's important to note that this does break the logic of the battle somewhat, because the remaining units don't adapt to the new battlefield but still try to follow their original orders. So it's possible, though far from guaranteed, that the archers still could have dropped the second corpse before it got close, but here they just don't try because they're still following orders from a timeline where the corpse doesn't exist. But this does still show us what could have happened, which is a lot worse than what we got. The loss of our general damages morale somewhat, and adjusts the balance of power in such a way that the enemy has more confidence and doesn't break as easily. But they're also following orders from another timeline, and so that last unit of bats stays out of the fight when it could still play a decisive role. Without the bats harassing them, the archers easily beat the enemy gunners, and then proceed to have a shootout with their general, who could still probably win if she charges in melee. Because the general's morale is better this time, she and the bats don't break when they're supposed to, and the battle just ends when the original battle did. For reasons unknown, this makes the game call it a defeat for the elves, though the battle results screen seems kinda confused about the whole thing. So while that isn't really a perfect look into another timeline, it does still give us an idea of how much worse the battle could have been if one or both of those corpses had impacted our lines. Anyway, that's it. I don't really know how to finish this video, so I'll just play back that explosion again.